Hello and welcome to a special episode of DSR. I am David Rothkopf. We're here to talk about the breaking news from the Middle East, and we are joined by two of our most trusted and respected experts, Stephen Cook of the Council on Foreign Relations, author on many subjects Middle Eastern, and one of the most reliable views on this we know. How are you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back, David.
Well, it's a pleasure always to see you, and of course, also always a pleasure to see our friend Alon Pinkas, Israeli diplomat, commentator, and general raconteur. How are you doing, Alon?
Well, given the Yankees, the Trump announcement interrupted the Yankee game when it was 1-1. So, all in all, it was a mixed night.
Yeah, it was a mixed night. I got a call from MSNBC. They saying Trump's announcing now. You have to be on now. Yeah. So I rushed to my closet and I changed out of my T-shirt into my MSNBC clothes, which are in my closet. And I scrambled to go on the air, and I said when, and they said now, and I said okay, and I stared into the camera. And Ari Melber said, "We've just gotten this news. David Rothkopf is here to break it down for us. David, you have 70 seconds."
I love when that happens.
And I was like, okay, fine. We have a little more time than that. In fact, one of the reasons we started these podcasts was circumstances just like that. Because this is a complicated situation, way more complicated than you would get even reading most newspapers, because a lot of big newspapers and a lot of big TV networks have said Middle East peace or Middle East peace plan. So, and it's like, wait a minute, is that what's really happening here? So that's my question, Steve. Is that's what really happening here?
No, I mean, it's obvious that that's the way the president wants to sell it. He's talked about it that way. But my sense is that, and I'm very interested in what Alon has to say on this, but my sense is that we're going to see hostages come home and in exchange for, Palestinians, and then thereafter the other 19 or 18 points in this plan will not be implemented at all. And the president will lose interest. And Tony Blair will be left holding the bag of a mess of a plan that in, kind of principle you could sort of get behind here, stabilization, reconstruction, but that there's no details and will be litigated to death by both Hamas as well as the Israeli government.
Well, that's pessimistic, but I bet Alon can get more pessimistic. I'm just
No, not necessarily. I mean, first of all, I agree with everything Stephen said, except for one thing. If it gets as bad as you and I think, or maybe even the three of us, I doubt that Tony Blair would immerse himself in this.
Fair enough.
Given the circumstances, because there are so many questions about those next phases that begin, by the way, an hour after the hostage release and prisoner exchange take place. Supposedly, Hamas is supposed to disarm. Says who? And let's assume that they are willing to disarm. Do all of them disarm? Who do they give their weapons to? Who's there to collect the weapons? I mean, these are very on-the-ground practical issues that the Trump plan has no answer for. Now, let me say something, 40,000 feet, and then I want to hear you two guys. There are two ways of looking at this plan. The first is, this is the only plan in town. Let's not relitigate the fact that it could have been that it was on the table for the better part of the last 18 months. In fact, it is not that different from the Biden plan of December 2023 that Kamala Harris presented in Dubai in February 2024. But let's not really relitigate that. Here's the plan, and according to the approach number one, it has deficiencies, it has ambiguities, it has points that are intractable, amenable to all kinds of interpretations. But guys, this is it. There is nothing else. In fact, if I were Trump, if he had any respect for international institutions and multilateralism, I would go with this plan to the Security Council and ask them to make this a binding resolution, which he won't because he has issues with the UN. Okay. The second approach is what Middle East scholars and Middle East diplomats have done for years, and that is dissect this, kill it by going point by point, which is exactly what we're doing, and saying, okay, this will never work. Now, the second approach is very pessimistic, but it also corresponds to reality much more than the first, because the first assumes, the one saying that this is the only plan, let's endorse it, let's hug it, let's move forward. It assumes goodwill, which is an ingredient that does not exist. It assumes trust, which does not exist. And it assumes actual support from the surrounding envelope or surrounding circle. That doesn't exist outside of the rhetoric. And just like you said, even Trump is going to lose interest. Here's the thing: he wants the Nobel Prize. So tomorrow is the day, right? If they announce that he gets a Nobel Prize, he'll be the happiest man in the world, and then lose interest because there's no second Nobel Prize waiting. If he doesn't get the Nobel Prize, he will be sulking, angry, and his usual tantrums will kick in, and then he won't be interested at all. Why would I bother? And so any way you look at it, I don't see a bright future for this plan.
Okay, I want to break it down into parts here.
Go.
But first, let me just pause, wave my hand at Joe Vitale. Joe, Alon sounded a little muted to me there for part of that. Are you getting that, or does he sound okay to you? Okay. Okay. That's fine. Alon, do you have a microphone, or is it just on
No,
your
it's working fine. It worked all day on all these including your friends at MSNBC.
Okay, well, that's fine. It just was it was I could hear you. It was just in and out. Although yeah, just that's fine.
No. Okay.
Just lean in a little bit. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
All right. All right. Fine. Sorry. So we'll stop and I'll go to my question. So, well, let's pick up on that, and I certainly want to leave enough time to talk about phase two, because phase two is most of the plan, right? Phase one is like 5% of the plan, and phase two is most of the hard parts. But getting here wasn't easy, and I think we need to be fair. If 20 living hostages come home, that's a step, and those families will be happy. If the bodies of the other hostages are returned, that will at least address a need of those families. If there is any kind of ceasefire, if there is more humanitarian aid that makes it into Gaza, these are all positive things. And frankly, people have been trying to get to them for a while. Poll the people who were involved. They said Trump really put some pressure on Netanyahu. To that extent, Witkoff, Jared Kushner, et al. Deserve some credit, don't they, Steve?
Oh, I think without a doubt they deserve credit here. I think the president, there is some value at this moment to have a president who's transactional. And I think this came together at first with Israel's or Netanyahu's order to strike Hamas in Doha, which was ill-conceived and failed. But it put Netanyahu on the defensive with the president, who was proclaimed publicly that he was unhappy about it. Israel's Arab partners were really, really unhappy about it. And so it softened up Netanyahu for Trump. At the same time, the Qataris, who were scared by this, were demanding not just an apology from Netanyahu, but a guarantee from the United States. So here is this very transactional president who says, now I have something to work with. I can I can give the Qataris an executive order that says, I will protect you, in exchange for them putting the screws to Hamas. And there was already some sentiment within the Qatari system that says, what do we need this for? Hamas is, it's like herding cats. We can't deal with the Israelis. Why should we even do this? And so it focused their attention on putting a lot of pressure on them. Meanwhile, Netanyahu was under a lot of pressure, and Trump, I think, skillfully put himself on the side of 65, 70% of the Israeli public that wants the war to come to an end and bring all the hostages home. And Netanyahu couldn't possibly defy both. He can defy the Israeli public, but he couldn't defy Trump, especially since he was on the defensive with both Trump as well as those Arab leaders. So the president, actually being transactional, started to extract things from everybody. Then you get Jared Kushner coming in, who stitches together all of these different plans. As Alon points out, this was a plan that was essentially the Biden plan in 2023, plus a few other things, Tony Blair. And the Arab states and Turkey are very, very interested in this happening and playing ball because they want stuff. Turkey wants F-35s, it wants a variety of things, so they're willing to put pressure on Hamas. And the Jordanians, the Saudis, all this, they have political problems as a result of what's been happening in Gaza. They would have been totally fine had the Israelis pursued a 3-month devastating response to October 7th. But the fact that it's gone on for 2 years, tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed, they need something from this because they're under a lot of political pressure at home. So the president stitched this together. Now, it's an accomplishment to bring the hostages home. If I were him, I'd sort of stop because the rest of this, as we've been talking about, is going to be subject to endless negotiation.
Well, I want to come back to that in a second because honestly, I think, you say transactional, I say he takes it all personally, but it's the same thing, right?
Okay.
But in terms of the hostages, I think Trump is a little over-focused on the hostages. He sort of has seen that as the extent of this. And when you get into issues like Palestinian sovereignty or self-determination and so forth, he's not as engaged in those issues in a way that will actually lead to a result. Now, Alon, we love you here and love it when you come to visit us in the United States. So I'm going to give you a piece of advice. If you write a column that says, the Biden plan triumphs in the Middle East, they're going to deny you entry.
I know.
Okay, I just want you to be clear that you'll not be allowed back in this country. So let me ask you the question from the Israeli perspective: who's getting credit for this more today?
Oh, Trump is, by a margin. Netanyahu is getting zero credit. In fact, Netanyahu's boasting that we won, and this is a result of military pressure and my determination, and I was resolute, and no one is buying into that. I was at Hostage Square, which is like 50 yards or 50 meters away from where I live. I was there twice today, just to sense the atmosphere. People were holding American flags. People were holding pictures or cardboard cardboards of Trump. I then saw in one television engagement that I had, they showed a video. I wasn't even aware of that. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, one of the Trump universe's leading. He's standing right there where I was. I didn't see him, probably a different time. He's standing there, and he's calling the president on his cell phone. I assume that was pre-arranged. And tens of Israelis, families of hostages, passers-by, just got people who happened to be there. They're all screaming, "Thank you, President Trump. You did it. You're the man. Thank you so much. Come to Israel. We love you." No one mentioned Netanyahu. Now, we can dissect this and we can analyze this, and I think Stephen is absolutely right. Trump did hear something that Joe Biden was afraid of doing, that Barack Obama wasn't interested in doing, and that Bill Clinton overthought the political implications of, and that is exert pressure on Netanyahu. Call his bluff. Call his bluff. This is an asymmetrical relationship. You take you take Clinton and you take Obama. Everything nasty they had to say about Israel was a leak from a closed-door meeting in which Clinton said, "Who's the fucking superpower?" Excuse my language. Or Obama said chicken shit. or later Biden's used the variations of the F word. Okay, Trump actually converted that into policy. Now, you can make the argument that it's all Netanyahu's fault because, as always, he mismanaged his relations with America and misunderstood, and he cornered himself into a position where he has no levers of power over Trump. If Trump were a Democrat, he would have the entire Republican Party up in arms over what Trump just did. But he's got no one. He has neither the Democrat. 75% of the Jews support this. He doesn't have the Democrats. 50%, I'm just throwing an arbitrary number, of MAGA voters don't like him and don't like Israel. Just look at Tucker Carlson, look at Steve Bannon, look at one of my favorite women in history, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You look at what they say about him, and Trump knows this. So he cornered Netanyahu the same way that Stephen described this. And Israelis, back to your question, I took too long, David. Israelis credit Trump. Whether he deserves it or not, we can discuss this forever. I think he does.
Okay, so
First faith.
let us sort of pull the camera back a little bit. Hostages come back. There was some humanitarian aid gets in. There's a brief ceasefire. The administration is saying we will begin serious discussions on phase 2 on Monday. Right? In 72 hours, we're going to be waist deep in phase 2. But phase 2 requires you to get to resolve a bunch of issues that seem to be problematic. One, you have to get Hamas to give up their arms. We talked about that. You have to come up with some kind of governance mechanism. If it is purely an external one, Tony Blair and the Peace Council or whatever Trump is talking about, that's not going to work for the Palestinian people. It's not going to work for anybody. So you need to have some mechanism, and you've still got divisions among Palestinians. You also have an aspiration among Palestinians for self-determination. They want to control their own fate. The Peace Council can't hand a document to Kushner to develop casinos there. There's got to be some kind of a deal with the Palestinian people, and Netanyahu and his backers in the Israeli government are adamantly against a two-state solution. They are pro-ethnic cleansing. They have not moved off of this position at all. The Arab states that Trump in an interview with the New York Post this morning, Trump said, for the first time in 3,000 years, the Middle East is united.
Right, 3,000.
3,000 years, he said.
Yeah.
Is united for peace. But all those Arab states, based on conversations I've had with people from those Arab states, are saying, yeah, we'll help pay for rebuilding once you solve the political transition problem, which we just said, I could build out, and I'd prefer it if you guys built it out, but it seems to me that each one of the other 19 steps is more intractable than the next. And maybe I'm overstating that. What do you think?
No, I think you're spot on, David. I mean, other than I'll say 18. I think flowing aid into the Gaza Strip is going to be less problematic. But I think disarmament, Hamas not having a political role going forward, finding some Palestinian governing structure, negotiating that, finding the people to staff it. What about this international security force? People keep saying notionally, Egyptians, Jordanians, maybe some Gulf states, Indonesians. No one's raised their hand yet and said that they're going to do that. And then what is that? Who's going to command and control this international security force? And what's the relationship with the IDF? And what happens the first time some remnant of Hamas, one of these atomized militant groups of 5 guys, takes a shot at an Egyptian soldier patrolling in Gaza? There's all these questions. Exactly. None of this has been worked out. None of it's been worked out. Then, as you point out, the Arab states, particularly the wealthy Arab states, don't want to be an ATM for something that has very little chance of succeeding. None of this has been worked out, and the the optimism is great for hostages coming out, but the optimism about the rest of the plan doesn't exist. And Palestinians say no one's actually asked Palestinians what it is they want, which is often a problem, always the problem, in fact. So I think the obstacles to realizing even significant parts of this beyond the hostage exchange for Palestinian prisoners and aid going into Gaza is very, very low.
The same question, Alon. I mean, where does this break down, or does Steve has said that he feels pretty good about two of the points, or one and a half. I don't want to overstate it for you, but there are 18 others where there's a problem. Where do you come out?
Same place, essentially. I could have said exactly what Stephen said and just signed on the bottom. There's,
It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Don't worry, he never does that. He'll say, "I agree 100%." But let me elaborate a little bit.
He's spent enough time in these parts that's an art. Yes.
That reminds me of the old joke when Peres went to see Henry Kissinger, David's old friend and colleague, and Peres talked and then said, "Henry, enough about me. Did you read my latest book?" Okay, some people swear that this actually happened. I was not in the room. But back to your question, David. Look, there are three levels of where this could go wrong. It could go wrong on an ideological level. You have a government in Israel that is opposed to any kind of coexistence with the Palestinians, which is legitimate if they had in mind any alternative substitute vision. They do not. Some of Netanyahu's claims along the years on why he's opposed to a Palestinian state make sense, except that he never said what he thinks instead, other than what our friend here, Shibli Talhani, calls the one-state reality, which is happening in front of us. Okay, so ideologically, for the Trump plan to work, you need a different government in Israel. A different government in Israel requires a new election. An election, by definition, postpones the entire process by 6 months, at least. Okay, so that's the ideological level. Then you have the political level. Any progress beyond phase one for Netanyahu means the end of his government. Okay, it's as simple as that. We can go into speculative scenarios on what would happen here and who would say what, but he could even indulge the idea of an election on this, making himself some kind of, he remodeled the Middle East, he defeated Iran, he defeated Hezbollah, he defeated the Houthis, he toppled the regime in Syria, Hezbollah has been decimated, Hamas has been destroyed. Now it's time for reconstruction and align himself with Trump and the Saudis or the Qataris or the Emiratis. And let the extreme right wing, although I don't like this distinction, I think he's an extreme right wing politician, but that's beside the point. Let them cater to their own electorate by saying never, 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 never. Okay. So on a political level, it won't work. And lastly, and we've discussed this at length in the last half hour. Practically, this can't work. It just can't work. The disarming of Hamas, the deployment of this Arab force, the ATM that Stephen was talking about. We're looking at $70 or $80 billion in order to rebuild Gaza. This is not asking the electrician or the guy who installs the windows to come in and fix the house. It's flattened. It's reduced to rubble. There is no Gaza. 70% of Gaza. Okay? You need 60, 70, 80 billion dollars to why on earth would the Saudis do that unless they are guaranteed with that political with those political assurances that both of you gentlemen spoke about? And so on those three levels, I don't see this working.
Just those three. Yeah. Okay. So in our remaining 5 or so minutes, Same question to both of you. It looks like there is a moment to savor, and then it looks like the negotiations will be tough, and then they will founder, and this will break down.
Mm-hmm.
What does the breakdown look like, Steve? What do you expect is going to happen?
Yeah, I have a very, very dark view of what the outcome of all of this is. You remember there was a time when day after plans were raining from think tanks in Washington and so on and so forth. And I read them and I said, this is totally detached from reality, and this is what this plan is, detached from reality. What it seems to me will happen is that we'll go back to some horrible version of the status quo that existed prior to October 7th, but with the Israeli government giving itself the right to intervene in Gaza at will. So there won't be new Palestinian governance. There really won't be much in the way of reconstruction. Poor Gazans will be dependent upon what the international community can get through there. There will be warlordism and violence, with the Israelis intervening intermittently, and the Egyptians and the Israelis keeping keeping Gaza bottled up. That seems to me where we're going, because in all of these things that we've been talking about don't really work, and no one has goodwill, and no one is going to step in. The president is going to lose interest because it's not going to work, and so he is the first president, as Alon pointed out, to actually use the theoretical leverage that the United States has. But what interest is he going to have to do it afterwards? So I think we're headed to worse.
Well, okay, because David earlier said that I could go one worse than you in terms of pessimism. Let me take everything you just said, adopt it, and then just posit this to you. It'll spill over into the West Bank.
I will get behind that as well. Yes.
See,
100%.
David? See? We all agree here.
I knew I could count on you.
Yeah, I know.
But how to just address the same question I posed to Steve, but in one other context, which you have a particular perspective on, which is we've got 4 months between now and the Israeli election. How does how many 6 months?
Well, the minimum is, if the government falls, it's a minimum of 90 days. So let's say 3 months. By law, it's a year from now. It's October 26th.
Okay. Well, it doesn't change my question. At some point in the next year, Netanyahu's going to be up for office again. So everything is done in an Israeli political context.
Yep.
Netanyahu has indicated by his activity for 2 years that he believes maintaining wars is, his trump card, you'll forgive me, in staying in office, right? And what my cynical mind, listening to where we are, has him say, well, they could not hand over the arms. They could not agree to our terms on a government. They could not agree to this. This will give us the reason to go back in. Trump got the hostages back. He'll get credit for that. He will be frustrated that he won't get the peace deal that will get him the Nobel Peace Prize next year. He'll wash his hands of it, as he has done periodically with Ukraine. And we can go in and finish the business of ethnic cleansing in Gaza.
Right.
That seems to me to be consistent with recent Netanyahu. Am I wrong or right? Or
Well, okay. So let me respond with a few. I'll keep it brief. The optimistic view of all this, David, is that if Trump puts his mind to it, which is asking a lot from a guy with such an attention span, but give him, let's say, for the sake of conversation, he could make this happen. In fact, he's the only one who could make this happen. Biden couldn't, Obama couldn't, Clinton couldn't, Carter tried, but it was a different era. Trump could make this happen. Will he? I doubt it. Will he have the engagement, the commitment to continue? I doubt it. The second thing relates to what you said about the cynical thinking or cynical deductions of what Netanyahu says and does. Remember, 70% of Israelis despise Netanyahu. 70% of Israelis don't like what's going on in Gaza. 70% of Israelis will not sit by if he goes through ethnic cleansing. And a word of caution here to me as an Israeli, you gentlemen may not be affected by it as much. Once Gaza opens up in terms of the media access, what Israel is calling a diplomatic tsunami and isolation and condemnations and admonitions is going to go on steroids pretty quickly, because then you will be exposed, and Israel will say it's AI, it's fabricated, it's been doctored. We don't know who these people are. This is not a mass grave. This is okay. It's going to become worse in the first few months. So I doubt Israel will go ahead with what you just described, David. The worst thing is this what Stephen described, this horrible status quo that could spill into, at least I'm afraid that it could spill into the West Bank.
Well, that is certainly true, and that's not something that's been addressed. And I would say my observation of the Trump side of it is that every time Trump has been asked about this over the past several weeks, he has talked about getting the hostages out. He has not talked about any of the other moving parts.
Do you blame him?
No, but I don't think he actually is cognizant
Of course he's not.
of the other moving parts. And I think, that suggests, if he is the linchpin and he's not cognizant of the issues or doesn't care about the issues, that does not bode well for this.
This is a guy who just brokered a truce between Azerbaijan and Albania. Okay?
Yeah.
So but let me ask you, gentlemen, a question. What will happen first? A Palestinian state will be established, or the Giants win a Super Bowl? I asked the viewers. I asked the devoted, subscribers of DSR.
God.
I'll defer on that one because I cannot imagine either scenario.
Yeah, exactly. They're equally remote.
So you want to add the Jets to the mix? No.
No. I do not. All right. Well, look, we said we would try in a half an hour to give you some perspective. I think we have gotten excellent perspective here, as I knew we would, because these guys are both brilliant, and they present unvarnished views, and I think that's really important. I was watching a television network earlier today, and there was a former U.S. government official on saying this is a huge victory for Netanyahu and the Israelis, and I was like, what? But that kind of thing happens, all the time. Anyway, I think we're cutting to the chase here, and I hope that everybody finds this first of the two emergency podcasts we're doing on this useful. We're going to do a second one tomorrow, in which we're going to have the view of our friend that Alon mentioned earlier, Shibli Talami, who is a Palestinian scholar based in the United States who studies this, to provide a perspective there. And to get a regional perspective, we will have our friend who is also a regional scholar, Kim Gaddis from Lebanon, providing some views. And I think between these two things, you will get.
They are both brilliant, if I may say so.
I second that, absolutely.
And you should ask them about the Giants and the Palestinian state.
Yeah.
But, it's important to get other perspectives.
Well, I imagine we'll end up just where we did on this. But in any event, so I encourage everybody to listen to that. And to follow whatever these guys are doing or writing. I wrote a column on this at the Daily Beast if you want to read about it. And stick with us through thick and thin here at the DSR Network. If you think it's of some value, go to membership, click on membership, support what we're doing. Viewership is up. That's excellent. We hope it continues. It will only continue if you do that. Go to watch it on YouTube. That's where the real growth is, and that's why it's so great that both of these two guys are so telegenic. So we will, yeah, exactly. So we will hopefully see both of you again soon, and see all of you in the audience again even sooner. Until then, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're off.